to Opportunity Knocks, the hottest new podcast in the IE. We are recording tonight in the Chica space, aka the 909 space. I'm Matthew, also known as the Red Raw. Normally we have a co-host, which is DJ Angie B, but she's currently out today. But today I got three special guests. If y'all can, introduce yourselves.
This is Mary. I'm the co-founder for Chica, and we're coming at you from the 909 space in the Dino, San Bernardino on 8th and E, the heart of our city here, of our hood in San Bernardino in the Inland Empire.
Hi, I'm Veronica. I'm a recent graduate from Humboldt State University, and I've been working with Chica for like ever, or it feels like forever. I studied anthropology when I was there. I loved hanging out at Chica, doing the activist thing, fighting the good fight, being part of the movement here in the IE.
Whoop, whoop.
My name is Asher. It's part of the Tribes Now. My pronoun for me is they, them, theirs. I want to give a remembrance to Pulse shooting in New Orleans, Florida. Also talk about mental health in the queer community. I am part of a health teacher in a pen, so I just want to shout out that, and also say shout out to all my brothers, sisters, and in general, performing folks who are celebrating or protesting the happy with this Pride Month.
So thank you all for being here today. I know that we want to touch a couple different topics, and one of them talking about gender. Mary, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so we've been having some ongoing discussions around different things that we're seeing in the community that are controversial and really shouldn't be controversial. One of them that I've been dealing with lately has been the idea of gender neutral bathroom. And at Chica, we do a lot of work around Chicano indigenous, like decolonizing and identity. And so for us, it's like we really don't understand what is so problematic about getting outside of the binary of just identifying men and women and getting on board with the idea that gender is a spectrum and it should be that way. I often hear folks talk about how this is problematic, like from a historical perspective, because it's change and change is hard for folks. But from an indigenous perspective, like we have indigenous languages where there's sometimes 16 genders represented in our indigenous languages. And so the idea that this is we're really going to go back to traditions and really go back to what our ancestors did, then clearly the gender spectrum is more correct than the binary. And this came up recently in a club meeting on campus where we were talking with some club members from one of our Chicano clubs at Valley College, and they normally have a setup where they have co-chairs. And this is, of course, recognizing the duality of male and female that's kind of like written into the purpose of co-chair, and it's the idea of having balance so that men are not dominating the leadership and not dominating control of organizations at the student level. And so having a male co-chair and a female co-chair, sounds really, really great to deal with that. But for some of us, we're starting to have that conversation. We have some students come to us and say, how can we get away from the male-female co-chair and go more towards some kind of representation of leadership that includes other gender identities? And so we're like, is that if we recognize the duality, is that now going to a triad or going to the spectrum? And how do we articulate what leadership positions look like if we want to have that gender balance, but we don't want to be stuck in this male-female binary? We want to be able to express that, like, does that look like cisgender and non-cisgender? Does that look like conforming and non-conforming? Like, we're just kind of curious as to what other people think who are also doing that work. And then how can we also support young people, especially students, who are clearly telling us that the whole male-female thing isn't working anymore, not just for restrooms, but for all types of things that we have this kind of gender binary attachment to.
I just wanted to piggyback on that a little bit because I think that this is a really important conversation. earlier before we started recording, we were kind of talking about this a little bit to get everybody warmed up. And I think that when we're looking at things like the gender spectrum, there's so many things that are happening right now where we're changing our language to better address those people that are non-conforming, if that makes sense. And so I think that we have to create space for that and figure out, what is going to be, I guess, maybe that perfect terminology or the perfect way for us to define it. And I think having a triad is a good idea, but I know that that's probably something that needs more work and more research so that people can fully understand what does that really mean.
Yeah, I think the struggle with coming up with a perfect way for me is going to be really difficult, especially with the limited, amount of words we have in our current language that we use today. Like we were talking about how, we're speaking in English, and English is obviously a colonized language and it comes from a colonized perspective. So the fact that indigenous people had 16 words for gender, for different genders and recognize different genders on the spectrum and we only have 2 has everything to do with, colonization and patriarchy and a lot to do with language. So, one of the things that we want to do is to start looking at other languages. So here at Chica, we're starting a Nawa circle that we're going to be, introducing pretty soon in July. And we already do, healing circles for the community. So we do a men's circle, a women's circle, an LGBTQ and Two-Spirit circle, and then we do a unity circle for all genders. So we try to represent the full spectrum, but it is a challenge in using the language we have today because if we're speaking English, then there's a limited amount of words for what we're trying to express. And that's really a part of the problem. Like I feel like the fact that our language is so limited is not accidental, that it is, a construct of power and how can we re-empower folks who are in different places of the gender spectrum or different places in all types of different ways, in ability, in age, and in lots of different aspects where we see that the norm especially using English, the norm is, favors like a very this or that type mentality instead of seeing that folks are all over the spectrum. If we really look at it, like as many people as we have in the world, that is as many gender identities we should have because everybody's identity is unique. And if you understand that it's a spectrum, then there's a shade of gender identity for every person who exists. Much like when we start talking about racial identity, it's very, hard to, if you're looking at it from a colonized way, it's like black, white, Latino or whatever they call it. And it's that it doesn't really represent who we all are. Like we are so much more diverse than that and we don't have words to describe all those different levels of being.
Right. And I just want to piggyback before we have someone jump in. It was like the conversation that we were having earlier where we were talking about, in different mythologies and whatnot, the gods that were out there, they had that ability where they could change gender, they could transform and become something else or someone else. And it was something that was almost like a luxury that they had where, for us, it's not that easy. They can snap a finger and they can become someone else. Whereas for us, it's this long, arduous process where we have to, one, I guess, and maybe I'm not the best person to speak about this, but go through this process of, in your mind, having to wrap around that there's not just 2 genders. There is this whole spectrum, and each person kind of fits in a different space. I want to open it up.
So I don't identify as a Two-Spirit person because I am white and not indigenous. But I do identify as trans. So this conversation is extremely important, especially one to have during Pride Month and during all the libations of queerness and things like that. And so we also need to understand that this libation of Pride was also a protest, and so we need to fight for the words that we need to use to project who our authentic selves are. So some people say that their pronouns are they, them, theirs, or they, them, theirs, and so that's how they see themselves as their authentic self. So I think instead of putting in a male female contrast, you can say like maybe pronouns or something like if you identify as this pronoun, that pronoun, and that I believe may open up the spectrum. And I'm thinking very liberally here because we just began talking about this. And I myself in this conversation really haven't thought about this topic at all. So I would definitely be going home and thinking about it more often. But going to what was something that Mary said is that about representation, we have a male and a female represented in this kind of group organization. And what would that look for representation to be in it? And I would say that there would be something around pushing what a queer person looks like and things like that. To have one queer person represented in that I don't want to say power structure, but that council leadership in that organization. And so that is problematic because we don't have one right way of being queer or trans or anything like that. And usually, if we do, stereotypically have one type of way of thinking about who is a appropriate or a non-controversial way of being queer, it's usually white, cis, homosexual males who are able-bodied and they are not full-bodied people, like they're not what you call fat or husky people. They are thin, they have abs and things like that. So they're very much the mainstream of what queerness looks like. And so I think, have to be cognitive, like, not only do we want to have representation in these certain organizations, but what does it look like? And does it look like problematic to other groups within the community?
So can I kind of ask a question just to follow up on that? So when you talked about the co-chairs or the leadership, you talked about including someone that had to be a queer person. But what happens when you have that person that identifies as gender non-conforming, but they say that they're not a queer person? Now, is it the fact that they are gender non-conforming, does that automatically make them a queer person?
I think that's an excellent question. I think that within the conversations that we're going to have right now and outside of this space, that is something that we need to think about fully because we cannot push just like we don't want other people to push on us our identity. We can't push our identity on somebody else, especially if they don't want to be on the spectrum or they don't identify like that. I was at a party one time and there was this person who identified as queer but said that they don't view their identity as political. Me as a very political person, I was very questioning that, and I'm like, well, your very existence is political, and she didn't want to be thought as political. So I think we have to respect each other's boundaries, identities, and things like that in this conversation.
The thing that I'm trying to get to though is like about language, and so like although I understand all that, and I definitely as a cisgender person, like I would know to stay in my lane, right? Like to not be stepping outside my lane and trying to tell folks like what they should do. At the same time, this particular student group is trying to write bylaws and constitution, right? So they're trying to write governing documents for their organization, and the very words male co-chair and female co-chair have to be replaced with something.
Right.
So like in the context of that, like how do we have that conversation about like, what kind of suggestions can we give with a limited language? Like we've already established that English is a limited language and is stuck in the binary. So the language that we have, like how do we start to move towards representing the spectrum in a way that has to be understandable and succinct, right? So like in this document, there's already a clause that says, no homophobia and, that, opens up space for LGBTQIA folks, in there, but it still says male co-chair and female co-chair. So folks are still forced to identify within the binary, even though the organization says that it's very pro, for the LGBTQI community. So it's like, at what point, we have to figure out, what language would we have in place, instead of that. And that's, I think, where it's really tricky, because those of us who are cis, we don't want to make that call. We don't want that. We don't want to say what that language should be. We want that to come from community about what that language should be. But there has to be something, like they were initially thinking about president and vice president. I'm like, no, like that's hierarchical, that's more colonized, that's more top down. I'm like, no, that cannot be the situation. Like, I know what it shouldn't be, but I don't know what it should be, and this is a part of, like, of course, the decolonizing process, right? As we start to decolonize, like how we come up across problems in everyday life, even in great orgs that want to do this work of being, inclusive, like, just the language itself is limiting.
Now, question for you, Mary, and I don't know if anyone else can answer this. Maybe you can. What kind of work has the group done so far to really include people that are gender nonconforming and trans? Like, have they looked at that yet? Yeah,
this particular group has been very inclusive in terms of gender nonconforming, trans folks. Like, I've been working with them for years, and I'm an alumni. And you're an alumni,
yes.
and DJ Angie B's an alumni, and I'm also just put out there that we're talking about a group of students known as MECHA. Okay. So yeah, they've been doing that work. There was a call out several years ago, because the MECHA organization does have a history of homophobia, where there was a MECHA handbook that came out that was very controversial. By someone wrote it who was in Riverside, and it was nationally disavowed by the Machistas. They came together at their national conference and disavowed this handbook because of the homophobia. And since then, their governing documents have written in, the piece about not being homophobic and being supportive of LGBTQIA community. So, and of course that language changes, as there was at first this gay community, now there was LGBT, now it's LGBTQIA, like it, constantly evolves. So constantly changing that. But at the end of the day, there's still a MECHA male co-chair and female co-chair. And so it's like, also understanding the duality, but also understanding that, the duality, is not, having everyone feel like it's including the whole spectrum. Because of those words and the language that's used.
Right.
I'm thinking maybe the problem could be the duality. Like, I understand that in a lot of cultures, duality is that symbol of balance and that symbol of all encompassing. But maybe it's not, because to me, duality also seems binary. It's two. That's the thing about dual. Dual is two. So maybe we should just get rid of two and think about more than two. Like we were talking about, maybe a triad, maybe four, maybe it's a group, maybe it's a council, maybe it's not just two, maybe there's more than two. And find the significance of numbers that are more than two.
Yeah, one of the suggestions made was to have just two folks and not specify gender, like two coaches, right? But then the check and balance that there's fear about is, if two folks were to run who were both male cisgendered, we would not want that, I think if we had two queer folks or two females or two of anything else that wasn't male cisgendered, it would be okay, right? But the idea that two male cisgendered people would be co-chairing is kind of counterproductive to the whole point of co-chairing, which is the idea of, understanding patriarchy and how patriarchy is related to the gender identity, So it's like, we know what we want. I think that the youth know what they want. They know what they don't want. And it's like, how can we put that in a language, in language that is very limited. And then don't even get started into the whole concept of bylaws and constitution and how colonized that is.
Yes.
So we're working in a system, where we're trying to work in a system and dismantle a system at the same time. And that in itself, of course, is very controversial, especially when we talk about, Chicano identity.
So I write notes and it helps me to process my thoughts. And so I'm looking at my notes. And one of the things that we said is that was said before this podcast started is that gender is a nonverbal communication, and it probably is a more accurate expression of yourself authentically and of the spectrum. I would say, as someone who's thinking about this conversation, in terms of myself, like what words would I use to describe myself, and what words have other people used to describe me? Language is fluid, and so some words that have been used to describe queer folks in the past, I say queer, and it was one of the words that has been historically used as negative, but now we're taking it back and we're using it in a positive way. We're reclaiming it. So maybe I think looking back at the history of queer people, maybe finding a word like lavender or would be a representative term for or label for this person. And even then, I hesitate to say the word label because then when you say you put a label on someone, you put them in a box. And so, for example, in the trans community, there is a term called passing and not passing. If you're passing on, obviously, it means that you look at and you express yourself as the gender that you identify with. If you don't pass, then you obviously aren't presenting, aren't acting, or aren't dressing in the way that your gender identity is saying. So an example of that is a trans woman with an Adam's apple, a prominent Adam's apple, was not passing because of the Adam's apple. Because if someone sees the Adam's apple, they're going to automatically say, "Oh, that's a man in women's clothing," stuff like that. So just between that, I think that the dichotomy of the language within our own community and things like that. Like some of us, we don't even have terms for who we are, and I think that this conversation about trying to figure out a word or a term or a label for something that's in between the male, female, and that's on the spectrum is, again, I think going to be long and arduous, but I think it's, in the end, going to be very needed. I think that there's going to be a lot of healing as far as this metric group goes, as far as their inclusivity goes, and it's here because it means that they're becoming as a whole, like their language is shaping their thoughts, and the thoughts that they're shaping their words. And so it just means that they're more authentically and more visibly, not only celebrating this community that, is historically repressed by many people, but they're trying to push the fact that there's people who identify as Chicano, Chicana, Latinx, and things like that who are queer. So I think that's a very interesting aspect of this conversation.
So one of the things that also kind of brings in this conversation, or why we're talking about this, is some of us recently went to a conference in New Orleans, and we went to the National Conference of Race and Ethnicity. And I've been working in higher education for 20 years at community colleges, and with lots of organizations, attending lots of conferences. And this was the first time that I ever went to a large national conference where I saw a mainstream hotel relabel their bathrooms for non-gender bathrooms. And this was very interesting especially because we're in California, and California kind of gets the rep of being like 10 years ahead of other folks, so progressive supposedly, so ahead of our time in terms of things like race and gender identity. And yet here we were in New Orleans, and this hotel, made their bathrooms, gender neutral. They, left a women's bathroom, and then the male bathroom, they relabeled it as, gender neutral. So, and then in some areas, they had both restrooms gender neutral. So it just depended on where it was in the hotel. It was a huge hotel. It was the Hilton. And, so when we right away, the first day went to the restroom, I went into the gender neutral restroom, and, the folks who were waiting outside the door for me, saw a man, also walk into the restroom, and he walked up to the door and he saw the gender neutral sign, and he said, "Oh, hell no," and like turned around and walked away. And keep in mind, this is the National Conference of Race and Ethnicity. So this is a conference of higher education folks at a national level, almost 4,000, educators. These are educators, who are educating mostly college students, and to have that kind of reaction from someone who is an educator from the very first second we got there, it was both alarming, and it was also very, to be honest, it was very inspiring, because the fact that the Hilton was willing to go there, and really let that happen, clearly people were going to be uncomfortable,
Right.
and I'm sure they got complaints. I'm sure. But despite the whole, corporate mentality that these hotel chains have, they saw the value, and I'm sure that the Encore folks demanded that be a deal breaker. Like, we're only going to have a conference here unless this is an option. And I feel like that's going to start happening more and more, where folks are going to say, we're not going to spend our dollars with you if you do not, at the very least, acknowledge the need for other genders to have a safe place to go to pee and, do their basic needs. Yeah, their business. And so it's it was really fascinating to see that interaction. And then other folks, of course, no problem whatsoever. And so even in academia, not that academia is that great, but even in academia, you would think folks would already be a little more conscious and aware. There's still, struggle with folks even getting their mindset outside the clinic.
Mel, do you mind if I interject?
Oh, absolutely.
One thing that I've been thinking about this whole time that we haven't really touched on, but you kind of did right now, is if we think back in time, what it was like when people were first mixing racially, it's almost that same thing where we're trying to figure out, a way to define each other. And it's like, okay, we're looking at gender and we're saying, okay, there's these two things. When you look at race, for some people, before we look at the death, it's like, okay, you have these two things. And then how many different words and terms do we have to talk about someone who is biracial? And why can't we do the same thing when someone
with
is,
gender?
Yeah.
That's a perfect example, Matt, because especially in the setting of where were we? Louisiana.
Right.
Louisiana. New Orleans, right? And these folks are, really, I think, from a cultural perspective, super authentic with the fact that they are, multiracial, multicultural, multi-religious, but there's a really unique merging of Catholicism with, voodoo, with there's just all this mixing happening in New Orleans, and yet it's not what do you call that when you mix something? It's not diluted.
Oh, okay.
It's not diluted, right?
Yes.
It's Creole, right?
Yeah.
They create a new name for it, an identity in and of itself,
right,
that infers that it has both Black culture,
right,
French culture, indigenous culture,
right,
it's all inferred in the very name,
right.
And to be honest, I think a lot of that was done successfully, or certainly more successfully before it came to the United States,
yes,
right? And then once it became the United States, then all that patriarchy and colonization Like, there was colonizing already happened, but it just became so much more clear and evident, and that brings us to the modern day today where you can see the racism and the disparity, but I think culturally, from a cultural perspective, like, there is a certain feeling about New Orleans where there has been a very strong preservation of culture. And even and a preservation of culture that infers there's a spectrum, like, and that folks are very much all over the spectrum, and people are not just pegged into these like boxes where it has to be one thing or another. So
Right.
yeah, why can't that happen for gender?
I think that brings up a lot of great points too. What I was going to suggest earlier is we were talking about how limited the English language is. What words are we going to use? Why don't we just make up new words for people who don't conform? They just make up new words. We've done it a million times. Like, think about all the slang and these hashtags. All things kids are saying these days. I don't even know how things are saying these days, but we just like make them up. That's why we have Urban Dictionary. Just make words up, you make stuff up, it goes online, it becomes popular, it goes in the regular dictionary. It's not that hard. Yes, the process is going to take time. With everything, it took time. With these labels that came for different races, different, identities, it takes time. Just for the United States to become the United States, it took time. Colonization takes time. Decolonization is going to take time. We want to just snap our fingers and have everything just magically there. And I think we have to remind ourselves that this is a process. It's going to take time with any process. But that doesn't mean we can't be creative with this process.
True.
So I just want to hit on a couple points that I made. First, Greta's point of like making up different words to encapsulate different identities. I did bring up in the beginning the they, them, their, he, them, their identity or gender pronouns that have been created to encapsulate gender queer folks and things like that. They, them, their has traditionally been for and so the process that I think Meta was talking about trying to get people to think about gender and the conversation in a different way is that, we are now talking about they, they're in one person. And so for some people, especially English, I think English academics and things like that, professors, I think they had a really hard time because they grew up and they were really indoctrinated with this idea that they, them, there's more than two people. And so when they go to diversity training, they're taught differently, where they, them, they're like one person, and they have to really process that in their whole entire, I think, span of their academic career, because it's now that they have to process not only this word, but how they use it, not only within themselves, but their classrooms and with their students as well. So if the students come up and say, why are you using they, them, their in, a singular term and not like, as a plural term, then the professor would have to like comment and say, well, I'm using it because of this way, and know exactly how to express that.
Ooh, that brings up a great question. So, you know how it's kind of like what Veronica's talking about with the Urban Dictionary and how it eventually becomes, correct grammar usage, when it's been used in a certain context for so long. So the them, their pronouns, have those been officially adopted into the correct grammar guidelines?
I think so. Because I think it was called the singular. I cannot remember the name right at this moment, but I know that I've heard something about that.
This is where we need DJ RGB.
Right? Right?
We're missing it. We're missing it.
We got Rev Rod here, so we got
Hey. One thing I did want to throw out there too is, just to take it back to this group, and if we're looking to hopefully find somewhat of a solution to give to them, I think talking about that triad is a really good idea, because at that point you can have your two binary co-chairs and leave that other one open. I don't know that there is a perfect answer, but at least having a space created so someone who fits in that, and I hate saying box because I don't want to say box, but maybe that space, because at that point it's more about the role and not being one specific gender or no gender at all. It just gives that opportunity to create another mind to be added to that council, I guess it would be at that point, to help lead the way. What do y'all think?
I think that there's an interesting solution slash dilemma that I'm thinking about, and that's an open triad. And what that means is that anybody who identifies as male could be the male culture for that meeting, and similarly for female culture, whoever identifies as female, and then have that open space for queer people. But that the next meeting, that those people are not the people from all the meetings. Like those people would be for that meeting. The cultures will change each meeting and stuff like that. So other people identify as female, other people identify as male would be able to come in, and that's where.
Yeah, and that's going to be problematic because part of the constraints that Metro has trying to do the work they do within college campuses is of course the normal structure is student government, right, and student clubs, and that those are run on a predominantly president vice president model,
Yep.
and on a very hierarchical model. That they're not permitted to change leadership every meeting. That's not allowed.
Yeah.
They have to be consistent. And you know this, Ashley, very well.
I know it very well.
That they have to have that stability at least a year of the same leadership in
Yes.
the organization in order for them to be an official organization. And so, yeah, I'd love it if we could get there where the entire higher education institution dismantles all that, but that ain't gonna happen very soon. And the other thing I would say is, you know, I think the whole concept of having the open triad is great, but it still doesn't resolve what language we use for that
Right.
first piece. And that's what we're really talking about. I think conceptualized, like ideology-wise, they've been on board with the spectrum already. They've been there, they've been doing that work, they've been, like, in terms of ideology and where their heart is there, you know. It's that we don't have the language to represent that, you know, in a clear way without having some long title that says LGBTQIA,
Right.
non-cisgendered, non-conforming, no male, just like, you know, like we'd have to like basically create this position that would just have this long, enormous title, like that just would not be functional, you know, so that's the challenge.
And do you think there would also be a challenge of, let's say, instead of saying or dividing co-chairs based on gender, but numbering them, like co-chair 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, we thought about that, but then how do we prevent 3 males, cisgender males, from getting into all 3 of those spots?
That's the dilemma. That is the dilemma. Because I'm like, okay, if you take out the gender, then you have the spots, but still there's no, like, real, at this moment, definable way of saying this third spot.
We basically don't have language that says we don't want patriarchy.
Yes.
We do not have that language in English.
Yes. I agree.
I think this is one of those spots too where I think all of us have been saying that going back and looking at you know, previous languages would be a good way, and especially an organization like Mecha, I think would be great to go and especially look at indigenous languages,
Yeah, Nawa,
not just of all over up and down this continent would be great to look for words like that, and if you know. Or even going as far as across the seas, other languages that may have a word that better grasps what we're trying to say. And I think that'd be very, or like I said, make up one. But I think especially with this organization, it'd be nice to go back and that would also be, as you said, like a part of that decolonization. We're not going to use these colonized words to define what these chairs are. We're going to go back and use those indigenous languages that have a better grasp of what these words mean and a better way of saying them than what we have currently.
So it sounds like we have a project for our NAWA circle. We're
Right.
going to start right away.
Right. Well, the question that I had is, since you had even mentioned it, that many indigenous cultures had up to 16 different words.
So do we have 16 co-chairs then?
Well, I don't know about 16 co-chairs, but I know that it's kind of been the term to say that people are two-spirited.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be an option, or do you think that would be too limiting?
It's very limiting, and it's also been called out as, kind of like Asher said, not appropriate for certain people to call themselves two-spirit without the indigenous knowledge behind why that is. I think, it's certainly not inclusive of all indigenous peoples, and not even all Mexican indigenous peoples,
right.
So not even all Latino American indigenous peoples. So, I think it would be too narrow. Two-spirit is too narrow.
Okay.
So again, it falls into that idea of, how do we capture, again, like Spin said already, we don't have that language, so it might be that we have to make it up, or we have to find it in indigenous languages, and I think that, it's a great project to give our circle folks when they start from Circle in July and say, hey, we want some help in doing the research and as you're learning languages, trying to find a word that would be better than what we're using in English.
I think too another problem with two-spirit is, like I said earlier, it's two. Going back to that two, going back to that binary.
Yep.
And the whole point of this is we're trying to break that binary. We're so engraved in this binary that it seems like even the words we think are very out there, open, are still very we were talking about the co-chair, so that's so futuristic, that's so advanced. You're still in that binary. What's really going to be advanced is if you break out of that binary.
Word.
Mic drop from Zero. So how we don't
Pretend.
Pretend. Mic drop. But I agree. I totally agree with that. I see absolutely no problem trying to go back to indigenous people and research words and things like that. So they were the original caretakers of this land. They and things like that. We need to not only acknowledge that, but the words that they use and stuff like that. They honored to their queer people, and they had them in spaces of not power, but high importance and things like that. So I have no problem with that.
So how do y'all feel about the Hilton right now? What I'm telling you about the Genesis bathrooms and that whole struggle.
Okay, so as I said earlier, I just graduated from Humboldt State University, which is one of those schools who is known for, again, being kind of that out of the box, really liberal school. And I was just thinking about it when we were there at the Hilton. Why don't we have this at HSU? Come on, we're supposed to, we have a whole, gender studies, major, it's CRGS major. We have this whole thing.
Wow.
And our school's, CRGS is critical race, gender, sexuality. It's a major at HSU and several other schools. But we have this, we're all about being environmentally friendly, so we have not only recycle bins, we have composting bins, we have water catchment systems on a lot of our buildings. Why don't we have gender neutral bathrooms? Come on, people. It seems so obvious. And while I was there, I was just I don't understand why we don't have this. And I really don't understand why people are afraid of this, especially if you own a home or you have a home or an apartment. Everyone has a gender neutral bathroom at your house. Everyone uses it. Come on, people, it's not that scary. Get with the times.
That goes back to my point of passing and not passing. If you think that there's a male in a dress in a woman's bathroom, this has been used by conservatives a lot. And there was actually a bathroom bill in North Carolina to keep trans people out of bathrooms that they identify with. So I get your sentiment, though. I vibe with it, but it's what about everybody else? Because in this room, we all agree, but outside, we need to deal with. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. to really understand why that's not happening, we have to have a really hard conversation about what exactly people are afraid of and how rational are those fears, And of course, the first fear that gets thrown out there is rape and predators, child molestation, right? And just the fact that that conversation is happening in the same conversation with gender-neutral bathrooms implies that LGBTQIA and non-conforming folks are somehow more likely to be predators or child molesters, which is completely false. Completely false,
Exactly.
So it's just and I'm one of those folks, like here at Chica, we do a lot of work around child protection of vulnerable community, protection of women, undocumented folks, abuse, all those things, sexual assault, all those things that are very hard to talk about. And in no way, shape, or form does it correlate with someone's gender identity. Predators are predators are predators. And predators exist in all races and all gender identities. And the predators that are out there, they're going to be predators no matter what we do. There is nothing we can do to keep them out of the bathroom. Like, they're going to use the bathroom, and almost all predators do in some form or format where they're looking for access to people that are vulnerable in a space where they can have privacy. That includes, offices, that includes bathrooms, that includes locker rooms, that includes, like whatever environment that they can seek to have that kind of privacy and control of someone. So it's like, that has nothing to do with gender and sexuality. And I think it's like a real failure on the part of society that yet again, we still misunderstand the purpose, behind folks who are predators, in that their predatorness is about power, not about sex.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
And until we start dealing with power issues in this country, and that goes right back to patriarchy. We start dealing with power issues, then we're never going to really have an ability to protect vulnerable people, whether they're the children or adults or women or whatever. It's the power part that we have to focus on, and that's the part people don't want to talk about.
Right. So before we get caught up in more conversation, it's actually our wrap-up time. In our last 2 minutes, what do you all have to plug? What's coming up? What events are coming up that we need to know about?
So there's a Q-Sesh, I believe, at the Chica Space on the 22nd. Q-Sesh is for folks, for youth to come, and just celebrate being themselves, but also learn more about what the Chica and non space has to offer as far as resources, representation, and mentorship opportunities.
Also, next Friday, we are having our LGBTQIA talking circle. So that's Friday at 7 p.m. And we do an LGBTQ talking circle every month. We do a women's circle, men's circle, LGBTQ circle, and in the months where we have 5 weeks, we do a unity circle with all genders. So if you're looking to get involved with the talking circle, you can check us out at Chica on our Facebook page. And the other thing we have coming up is a big event for families of our cooperative. We are the only service cooperative in the Inland Empire, and we're inviting our families over to the space for a family day, and that'll be on June 30th.
As we said earlier, check out for upcoming July NAWA classes that are coming out in our NAWA circle. So just stay posted on our Facebook page, keep in our social media, and we'll let you know what's coming up in July.
And thank you all. As for myself, please check out my website, mysticalministry.com. I do have 2 preaching dates in July where I will be at Pacific Unitarian Church in Rancho Palos Verdes, California. I'll also be at the UU Fellowship in Fullerton at the end of the month. So there will be a couple dates that I'll have listed. I will be re-preaching about the Black Panther in relation to power dynamics. And then I will also be doing my second preaching gig on, I totally blanked right now. But anyway, please check out my website and all my social media. On all my social media, it's at Rev Raw and also Mystical Ministry. So thanks for being present and sharing this time with us. We'll catch you next time on Opportunity Knocks.